Hi everybody, this is Dee Dee Berg from InTheKnowRadio.com, and I'm here today with Roy Hunter, our esteemed guest. Roy Hunter is a hypnotherapist and a published author of several books that are highly praised by professionals. His hypnosis textbook, The Art of Hypnosis, is required reading at many schools of hypnosis around the world. However, Roy is probably most well known for his groundbreaking work in parts therapy and conflict resolution with his textbook, Hypnosis for Inner Conflict Resolution. Roy's most recent book that he co-authored with Bruce Eimer, The Art of Hypnotic Regression Therapy, has also received outstanding reviews. In 2000, Roy was inducted into the International Hall of Fame for his written contributions in the field of hypnotherapy and is a recipient of 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards from 3 different organizations. In addition to working with clients and authoring books, Roy also teaches professional hypnosis and advanced hypnosis techniques to professionals around the world and self-hypnosis to groups and clients for personal and professional motivation. Roy is a featured speaker at hypnosis conventions, and his presentations include numerous workshops in both the USA and abroad. So welcome, Roy. Thanks so much for being a guest on our program today.
Thank you. It's my honor.
Thank you. So, how did you first get involved in the field of hypnosis?
In the late 70s, I was a stressed out sales manager for a major insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my clients was a cardiologist who said that if I didn't learn to deal with my stress, I would be seeing him under different circumstances unless I bypassed him on the way to the morgue.
Oh, those are pretty enlightening words.
It got my attention. I saw a hypnotherapist who taught me self-hypnosis to manage stress. And the technique she taught me way back then, I have taught most of my clients throughout the 32 years I've been in the profession. Then, not only did it help me manage stress, but as an unexpected byproduct, my blood pressure went down. My doctor was about to put me on medication, but blood pressure went down to normal after I started practicing the stress coping techniques. Then in 1981, I had an accident injuring my back, ended up in the hospital for several days, and had a very bad prognosis because of fractured disc with a disc fragment sticking into my spinal cord.
Oh, I'm sure that couldn't have felt very nice.
The pain was excruciating. The day before the surgical procedure was to take place, they took me down to X-ray to have some additional X-rays done to see exactly where the fragment was. And on the way to the X-ray room, I was doing some self-hypnosis and silent prayer. And felt something happen in my lower back. The feeling returned to my legs just like that within a half a second. And the X-ray showed that the disc fragment had been absorbed by my body. My doctor said it was almost as though Scotty teleported it out. And he said, I have no medical explanation for what happened, but you will not need the surgery. He said, however, you will suffer chronic back pain for the rest of your life because of a missing disc in your lower back.
Wow.
Through hypnosis and self-hypnosis, I have been able to live a normal life without the pain meds, but if I overdo it, my back will warn me something's wrong. But because of the benefits of hypnosis to help me deal with chronic back pain, it made a real believer out of me in the power of the mind.
Okay, and then did you go into hypnosis shortly after that?
Within 2 years, I had an opportunity to learn hypnosis from the late Charles Tebbets. I found out about his school and enrolled. I changed careers. I figured that if I could sell insurance, I could just as easily sell self-help.
Wonderful, wonderful. So how is it that you use hypnosis to motivate people?
When a person sees me for habit control, I have the person list his or her benefits for achieving the desired results. That approach came from my sales background, and I have to admit, at the time it was original. It's not the approach I learned from my mentor. And I found that by allowing clients to be like a salesperson selling success to the subconscious, I got a lot of good results without the necessity of discovering the subconscious causes of resistance. So many of my clients through the years have been able to succeed without my needing to do regression or parts therapy or other techniques. However, when there is subconscious resistance, which is true for 40 to 50% of the people, I'll use techniques to discover whatever the cause of the subconscious resistance is, and then help the client release his or her emotional attachment to the cause so that they can enjoy lasting success.
And so, because you've been doing this a number of years, I'm sure you've seen some pretty interesting forms of resistance.
Yes, I would have to agree with that.
So just share just a couple with our audience so that they can understand that the unconscious can come up with some real doozies. I believe you told me one about smoking.
Yes, there was a smoker who kept backsliding, and I did what in hypnotherapy we call idiomotor response questions. And I'm asking a series of 7 questions about different categories of causes. And when I got to the question about identification with a mentor or somebody a person wants to emulate, this client burst out in hysterical laughter. He opens his eyes, he's just howling, putting his arms up and down on the arm of the recliner, and in the midst of laughter says, "I can't believe it. I can't blanking believe it." You can use your imagination for the blanking part. And it took him 30 to 40 seconds just to get those few words out in the midst of the hysterical laughter. And I said, "Can't believe what?" He said, "The Duke. All these years I have smoked because John Wayne was my childhood idol. I wanted to be just like the Duke." And it took him about 2 minutes to get those words out in the middle of the hysterical laughter. And then he said he smoked like a chimney and smoked himself into an early grave. He said, "So help me God, I will never smoke again." So he literally laughed himself out of the smoking habit, and he'd attempted several previous attempts to quit smoking and kept backsliding. This time his success was lasting, but it was his aha moment to realize that his inability to quit smoking on several previous attempts was because that part of his subconscious still idolized John Wayne.
And was relating to him through smoking, wanted
Yes,
to be just
indeed.
like him. So what other really interesting forms of resistance have you seen in people's unconscious?
There was a lady who had great resistance to any type of positive suggestion regarding controlling her eating habits. And she was a person who was concerned about hypnosis because she was used to giving orders instead of following orders. So what happened is, with her lack of positive response to the positive suggestions, when I went through the finger response questions, it turned out that she had an authority imprint. So some authority figure from past or present imprinted her subconscious in some manner. So I used age regression. She went back to age 7. And I said, "Where are you?" "I'm at my cousin's birthday party." And I said, "What's happening?" "Oh, I'm eating cake and ice cream, but my cousin pushes me over and my cake and ice cream falls on the carpet." And then she started displaying some emotional reactions, which we call abreactions. And then after the initial abreactions, she said, "Mommy comes up and says, 'That's okay. You can have more cake and ice cream. Someday you'll be big and people won't push you around.'"
Oh.
Her subconscious interpreted big as wide rather than grown up. That was her aha moment, and the pounds started peeling off in the weeks that followed.
Isn't that interesting? That is so interesting.
And I have one more which had a totally surprise twist. A gentleman saw me for smoking cessation. And I always include a session on self-hypnosis for stress management for smokers, because stress causes more backsliding than all reasons combined. When he comes for session 2, he tells me he's still smoking like a chimney and had 0 reduction in the frequency or severity of the urges. And I offered to include more suggestions at the end of the stress management, which he said fine. And then I scheduled a third session, planning on using techniques to discover the subconscious cause, whether it was parts therapy or regression therapy or idiomotor responding, to determine which technique to use. And he declined all three of them.
Interesting.
I considered my client as my employer, and since my employer is the one that pays me, after I have done my job to let the client know of available techniques, if the client insists on not experiencing one of those techniques to discover the cause, I'll go with it. He said, no, I just want you to give me the same suggestions you gave me the first week.
Okay.
So I did. And I called him up several weeks later. I'm still smoking like a chimney, but I'm not concerned about it. When I get ready, I'll come see you again.
So there's something percolating in there.
There was something percolating, but not at all what I expected. A year and a half later, he comes back to see me and says, I want to go through your stop smoking program again. So when he comes in, I said, before I let you invest your time and money in more sessions, will you please tell me what's different now versus last year? And he said, yes. Do you remember that you told me all hypnosis is guided self-hypnosis? I said, yes. He said, well, when I felt myself really getting mellow and you gave me suggestions to be a non-smoker, I had this sudden flash that it would be better to be a non-drinker instead. So I kept translating non-smoker to non-drinker, and I haven't touched a drop of booze since my first session with you.
That was more important on his list.
Yes. So that was an amazing insight to me, that if someone with an alcohol problem has a total commitment,
Right.
a total commitment, that hypnosis can help that person. But unless a person has a total commitment and is not yet chemically addicted, they might be better off to see a certified chemical dependency counselor. But that was an amazing success because I didn't have a clue that he had a problem with alcohol until a year and a half
He
later.
didn't share that, did he?
No, he didn't.
So you're most well known for your parts work therapy, which helps people deal with inner conflict. Do you
Yes.
want to describe for our audience just what that is and how parts therapy can help one resolve that conflict?
Certainly. It's based on the concept we wear different hats. All of us have parts. So let's say a client is seeing me for weight loss and comes in for a third session and says, well, I want to succeed. There's a part of me that loves the suggestions you're giving, but there's another part of me that is bound and determined to make me eat my favorite junk food. It's obvious that the client has an inner conflict. So my pre-talk before attempting parts therapy is to say, we all wear different hats. You are seeing my hypnotherapy cap. When I go home after a long work day, my inner child cap is on when I want to have something fun, whether I want to see a movie or do something different or just relax and enjoy fun and games or recreation. There's a part of you that wants to be at your ideal weight and has motivated you to invest your time and money for these sessions. But there's another part of you that wants to keep on overeating, otherwise you wouldn't need my services in the first place, would you?
That's right.
And once the client agrees with me, then I'll continue. In a moment, I'm going to guide you into hypnosis and then call out that part of you causing you to overeat and allow it to express, and then call out that part of you that wants to be at your ideal weight. And I'll be like a mediator facilitating inner dialogue and helping those two parts come to terms of agreement. Any questions? Most clients are comfortable with that pre-talk. Some are not, in which case I'll mention that there are other variations of parts therapy, and one of those variations is a technique called ego state therapy. And Gordon Emerson, who's the current world authority on ego state therapy, discovered that all of us have anywhere from 5 to 15 different parts or states of the subconscious that influence our behavior in any given calendar week.
So would that be like one of us wants to be a great daughter, one of us wants to be a great mother, one of us wants to be a great employee. Is that what you would call a part?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And I used to wonder where these parts come from. Charles Tebbets didn't give me a satisfactory answer when I asked him in class in 1983. And then years later, when I was researching some of the variations of parts therapy, I found out that John Bradshaw had come to the conclusion that these are developmental stages, that we all have an inner toddler, an inner preschooler, an inner grade schooler, an inner adolescent, and an inner adult. I found out that I had an inner parent when I became a father. And after years of telling people in my workshops, I have all the parts I want, thank you very much. I had a new part form 11 years ago, my inner grandpa.
So we all experience those different parts.
Yes, we do.
I think the problem comes when one part kind of takes over the rest, right? So for example, when somebody wants to lose weight, there's a part of them that just really wants to make them feel happy by eating chocolate cake and
Yes.
kind of takes over the rest, the whole show. That's when
A client years ago saw me for smoking cessation, succeeded totally, and a year and a half later he comes to me for weight loss. Now he was already overweight when he saw me for smoking cessation, so he did not gain weight as a result of quitting smoking. I give a client a suggestion of a deep breath of air as a replacement when old smoking triggers occur so that they don't use food or calories as a substitute for smoking. At any rate, because of his total success, he had a total expectation of success with hypnosis for weight loss. And he comes in for a subsequent session and says, I'm doing great at work. I walk by my receptionist's desk without dipping into her candy dish, and I'm able to bypass the vending machines during breaks. But he said, when I get home after dinner, it's one non-stop snack from dinner until bedtime. So when I explained the concept of parts therapy to him, he thought that he would be very happy to try that. The part causing him to overeat said that we should call him happy. And I said, what job do you do for Bob? My job is to make him happy. And I said, how do you do that? Response was, well, I make him snack from dinner until bedtime.
Right.
And I said, why is it necessary to make him snack in order to be happy? And the response was, because all he does is believe in the 3 W's. Work, work, work. Work in the morning, work in the evening, work on weekends. Give, give, give. Give to his employees, give to his wife, give to his kids, give to his church, but he never gives back to himself. So he was a workaholic. And happy was going to make him eat and tantalize his taste buds to make him happy, unless or until he found time to do recreation.
There you go. So a part always has a positive motivation in the end.
Yes.
It's just that sometimes the way in which it goes around doing it is probably not the most effective, to say the least.
For any professionals watching this video, I would like to say that I only use parts therapy when it's appropriate. Over half of my clients have not experienced parts therapy because oftentimes hypnotic regression therapy is indicated instead of parts therapy. So I believe in fitting the technique to the client instead of vice versa, and I call that client-centered hypnotherapy.
Right.
Charles Tebbets very emphatically said we need to fit the technique to the client instead of vice versa, so I consider Charles Tebbets to be one of the pioneers of client-centered hypnosis.
And it makes sense. You're going to do what's
Yes.
best for the client and what's needed for them in the end.
Indeed, and I endeavor to do for the client what I believe I would like done for me if the roles were reversed.
Absolutely. So in the past couple of years, you've been doing, and forgive me, I don't know how many years it's been, work with a part of the person that's, can we call it the higher consciousness or the all-wise knowing, or what would you call that part that can really give us information outside of ourselves?
I consider that to be the client's perception of higher power, because to some people it's God, to others Heavenly Father, to some Yahweh, to some Holy Spirit. Christ, universal consciousness, divine light, and I use the terminology that the client believes in because I believe this is only going to be effective if I work within the framework of the client's belief system. But some of the most profound sessions I've ever been privileged to facilitate have been based on this access to divine consciousness and divine wisdom.
So when you get somebody in touch with that divine consciousness or wisdom, how does it help the client? What do they normally, or I guess there's no normal in this since everybody's different, but give us an example of what somebody would experience or how it could help them.
I had a hypnotherapist ask me to do parts therapy on him because he had an inner conflict over whether to continue in real estate or pursue his life passion because of his passionate belief in hypnotherapy. So he asked for career guidance from his higher power. And when his higher self came forward, his higher power said, continue both paths for the time being. Devote 30 hours a week to real estate and devote 20 to 30 hours of hypnotherapy, because he was a workaholic. He loved to work, and it was nothing for him to work 60 hours a week. And then his higher power said, as you increase your wealth through real estate, you can gradually taper off on the real estate when you start substituting the income that you give up with increasing income from hypnotherapy, and give yourself several years to do this.
So there was no conflict. Do both.
Absolutely.
But
So
he wouldn't have known that, because in his mind it was one or the other.
At a conscious level, you're absolutely right. At a conscious level, he thought it was one or the other, and he felt conflicted about doing both. Now, I'll share my own personal story with you. For years, I felt like I would be stepping over the line to teach this in a college. So all the years I taught my 9-month hypnotherapy certification course in a college, I kept this in the closet, this higher power aspect. Then a friend of mine who was a clinical psychologist said, you can't keep this in the closet. You have to bring this out in the open and let people know what you're doing. So in 1999, when I taught parts therapy in Ireland, that was the first time I brought it out in the open. The response was so enthusiastic that it really motivated me to believe that my friend gave me some good advice. And then I wanted to write something about it. Every time I would attempt to write some chapters of a book on spiritual trance work, something would happen. The first time I got so enthusiastic, I worked most of the afternoon writing 2 or 3 chapters, and I goofed. I forgot to hit the save button, and a flash of lightning, which is rare in the Seattle area, caused a power surge. My computer rebooted, and I lost all of that work. So I set it on the back burner for several weeks, then did it again. This time I remembered to save. Eventually I had 4 or 5 chapters written, and my computer crashed. I had not backed it up on a diskette.
Oh, that's such an awful feeling.
Oh, it took me months to get back to it.
I think we've all experienced that awful feeling.
So again, after quite a considerable length of time and a few other obstacles that I won't go into details with, I finally had 3 or 4 chapters written and backed up on a diskette. My computer crashed again after I got another computer because the hard drive was irreparable. I had apparently gotten a virus or some sort of malware that completely ruined my hard drive. When I bought a new computer, I stuck the diskette in, and the diskette was damaged. So once again, I lost the files. This really confused me. So in August of 2003, I was doing a parts therapy workshop at a national hypnosis convention, and one of the ladies in the workshop asked me to do a session that evening because I would spend the last 2 hours of a parts therapy workshop discussing the spiritual aspect of parts therapy. She was so spiritual that instead of letting her pay me for the session, I asked her to do a spiritual session for me. the question I wanted to ask my higher power was for some insight regarding a spiritual hypnosis book. And oftentimes I get vague answers such as all will be revealed in due time, or when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Instead, my higher power part said, quit dragging your feet and write a book on parts therapy first.
Oh, wow.
And I have an analytical resistor part that immediately interrupted the facilitator and blurted out loud, what publisher do I use? My higher power part said, the publisher will come to you. I opened my eyes, started laughing, saying, publishers don't come to you unless you're rich and famous. And besides, before I said anything after besides, she demonstrated she was a good listener because I told her I was analytical, and if I popped out of trance, she needed to activate an instant trance trigger, which she did. Right back down into hypnosis I went. And she asked, what does Roy have to do to attract a publisher? Higher power response was, he's already done it. And then she said, when will a publisher come to him? Soon. She said, how soon? Very soon. And then my analytical part blurted out, what do I have to do to be in the right place at the right time for the publisher to come to me? All will be revealed in due time, end of trance. That was Thursday night. The next day I'm sitting at my table selling and autographing copies of my books, and this lady comes up asking me to autograph a copy of The Art of Hypnotherapy. She says, by the way, I'm Jody Tracton. My husband is National Marketing Director for Crown House Publishing. Would you consider Crown House for your next publisher?
Oh.
I think that qualifies as very soon.
And were you shocked when this happened? I mean, you had to be thinking,
Blew my
how
socks
did this part of me know that this was going to happen?
It probably didn't, but I believe somehow I was deep enough with a genuine request to access divine wisdom that did know.
Right.
Because apparently it had already been set in motion. Somehow I had already attracted Crown House Publishing because they have a subsidiary company in the United Kingdom that was already selling The Art of Hypnosis and the Art of Hypnotherapy. So they knew about
Right.
that. Now, Chapter 13 of the Parts Therapy text is entitled New Frontiers, the Undiscovered Country. So Chapter 13 introduced the concept. And then several years passed, and people kept saying, why don't you write a whole book on this? And then I decided the only way I felt I could credibly write a book, if it was going to go to the general public, was to have at least 100 case summaries in the book. And different things kept happening to stop me from being able to get 100 case summaries. And then Stephanie Rothman, who edited Everyday Miracles of Hypnotherapy, had a number of contributing authors from around the world, and I was one of those that she asked to contribute to the book. She gave me the idea of doing the same thing for the Spirit Trek book. I now call it Spirit Trek, but the title has changed numerous times over the years. So quite a number of different hypnotherapists from around the globe have contributed case summaries, and I believe that's far better than if I was the one that did all of the case summaries, because you have a mix from a number of different hypnotherapists, some of whom are psychotherapists, they're hypnosis instructors, published authors. The leading hypnotherapist in South Africa contributed, the hypnosis instructor from Europe, a psychologist from Florida, and I am very pleased. Oh, and Dr. Eimer also contributed a chapter on his own journey through grief. I won't comment further on that. People will have to read the book if they want to find out what's in that chapter. And I am very pleased because I think it's far better than what it would have been if I had written it myself. Now, once it was close to completion, there was another problem. What publisher do we use? Because Crown House decided it was a little bit too metaphysical for their comfort. I went to them first because by contract they have the right of first refusal on any nonfiction book I write. So several of the authors said, well, let's self-publish. I'm not good at marketing. Referrals has always been my best marketing tool. People telling others about the quality of my work. So, once again, I put it out there. Okay, God, what publisher do I use? And another spiritual session, history repeated itself. The publisher will come to you. This time I didn't question it. However, within a couple of days, I get this email out of the blue from Blooming Twig Publishing asking me if I have a book in progress. How do you like them apples?
I can't actually comment at all. It's pretty...
They've given me an estimate of sometime in early 2016 as a release date.
Wonderful. I look forward to that book. Now, have you noticed any reoccurring pattern or something that higher consciousness or wisdom wants people to know about themselves?
Yes, that it's important to love yourself as you love others. That theme has emerged many times throughout the years. Although two very profoundly interesting stories that will be included in my chapter of case summaries for the book happened. One didn't start out as a spiritual session. A smoker saw me for smoking cessation and needed parts therapy to resolve an inner conflict. That part causing him to smoke would not come to terms of agreement with the part wanting him to quit. And they intimidated his other parts into silence. So I asked for that part that had his best wisdom, knowledge, understanding, training, and experience to come forward. The reason I did not ask for a higher power part is he made it very clear in the intake he was an atheist. When the part that had his best wisdom and highest good came forward, I said, what name or title shall I call you? Higher self. When he first emerged from hypnosis after higher self brought resolution for his smoking problem, the first words out of his mouth were, wow, I didn't know I believed in God before. I said, what makes you say that? He said, well, higher self was a spiritual part, and if there's a spiritual realm, there must be a higher power or a God. So that was very significant. If I had called out his higher power, he probably would have brought himself out of hypnosis and lectured me and never come back. But because it came from him rather than me, it was a life-changing experience for him. Another one was a person who was a devout Christian who was blind from infancy and felt that it was unfair that God would let most people be able to see and that he had to go through life not even knowing what it's like to see. So he wanted to know why he was born blind. He'd been angry at God all his life. So when I asked the question of his higher power, he emerges in a past life regression in medieval medieval Europe as a castle lord. He's describing a thick oak table with a big bowl of fruit in the middle, and he's looking out the castle window at green rolling hills, blue sky, deep blue, billowy clouds, and a huge apple tree with bright red apples dropping to the ground on the castle side of the moat.
By the way, this is the blind man describing
This is a blind man having a very visual past life regression.
Right.
He turns around and describes a huge stone fireplace with dancing flames of fire. And to make a long story short, his people complained about the taxes. He responded by raising taxes and said, if you complain again, I'll raise them even higher. So his purpose in that life, according to his higher power, was to learn the difference between being a leader and a ruler. And he said, I failed miserably, so my soul chose to be born blind in this current life so that I would always remember the lesson of not abusing power and being a leader instead of a ruler.
And so how did that sit with him after he came out of the session?
First of all, he was able to let go of his anger towards God.
Okay.
Secondly, the session had been witnessed by a couple of women that he asked to sit in on the session. And he said, it was just as amazing to me to remember what it was like to see. And one of the ladies said, don't you dream? He said, yes, but I dream in touch, sound, taste, and smell because I never had a frame of reference for seeing before. He said, all my life I've wondered what red and green looked like. I've wondered what it would be like to see. I have wondered what a blue sky with billowy clouds would look like. And he said, I've wondered what dancing flames of fire would look like. And he said, now I remember seeing. Now I have to say for the scientific skeptic that his experience is not proof that he lived that former lifetime, but would you like to try to convince him that he fantasized it when he never had a frame of reference for what it was like to see and now was able to remember seeing? So that case summary is one that I've included in the book.
Wonderful.
The book is chock full of some amazing stories from all over the world.
So according to our higher wisdom, you have to love yourself. Anything else that love others?
Be honest, walk in the light. These are some words of wisdom that have come through the years. Meditate. Be careful who you trust outside yourself, but trust yourself. In other words, trust has to be earned. That was one of my messages when I was on the receiving end of spiritual trance work, because I believe in walking my talk. How can I say I believe in it if I'm not willing to experience it? But a person has to be very, very deep in order to prevent conscious interference, as I call it, or preconceived opinions to taint the trance by altering the perceptions. You have to go into it trusting your higher power to give you what you need, rather than try to project what you want to hear.
Absolutely.
Secondly, the hypnotherapist or facilitator also has to set aside any preconceived opinions, get the client deep enough, advise a client on the importance of setting aside any preconceived opinions regarding the information received. And then with that being done, use the client's frame of reference to ask for that part that is most closely connected to God or Yahweh or Jesus or Heavenly Father or Holy Spirit or universal and consciousness or divine light, whatever the client's perception is of God.
Yeah, it makes sense. So what have you seen in terms of what we would call miracles with hypnosis? And it's not something that maybe you might consider a miracle, but somebody, for example, who is involved in, for example, an unexplained medical condition that has, worked itself out through hypnosis.
The first one that comes to mind happened in my classroom.
Oh, how so?
In the early 1990s, one of my students in the class said, "Have you ever used hypnosis to help somebody heal from blindness?" And I said, "No, why do you ask?" She said, "Well, I've been blind in my left eye since I was a toddler." She said my grandfather was bouncing me on his knee, and my eyeball hit his knee, and she said, I haven't been able to see anything but black or white, light or dark, can't even see shapes or colors out of my left eye. And she said, I've been to doctors over the years. They say the damage has long since healed physically, but for some reason or another, the messages are not going through my optic nerve to my brain. And she said, modern medicine says there's nothing they can do to restore my eyesight.
And how old was she at this time when she
40.
was? Okay.
And I said, I have to tell you, I've never gone there before. She said, well, since I'm a hypnotherapy student, are you willing to experiment?
Why not?
And I said, well, I'm certainly willing to go there if you wish. And since I didn't have any frame of reference for what to do, knowing she was a Christian, I asked her to go from a peaceful place to a sacred place and imagine Jesus entering her sacred place. And I said, imagine Jesus approaches you and touches your forehead with his hand. And imagine what it would be like to see with both eyes. And while you remain in deep hypnosis, I want you to cover your left eye with your hand and open your eyes, and with your right eye, which was a good eye, tell me how many fingers I'm holding up. 2, 4. And I said, okay, now close your eyes for a moment and just imagine, because you can do anything you want in your imagination, imagine that Jesus has already healed your eyes. Now cover your right eye and open your left eye and tell me how many fingers. She said 1. And I said, how many fingers? She said 4. And you should have seen the expression of her fellow students in the class when I did that.
I can imagine.
I said, now close both eyes and imagine your attitude of gratitude for Jesus healing your eyes. And I said, in a moment, I'm going to bring you back to conscious awareness, and it's important that you have total recall of everything you experienced in your imagination in this session. And I said, and when you come back, when I get to the number 5, you will be almost out of hypnosis, except you will have your right hand covering your right eye, and you will only open your left eye. Your right hand will still be hypnotized, covering your right eye. And when I get to 5, tell me what you see. So when I got to 5, I had written with a red marker, "Hi," with an exclamation mark on an 8.5 by 11 paper. So on 5, she opens her eye, says, "Hi."
Wow, that's definitely a miracle.
She was so moved emotionally, she immediately excused herself, left the classroom, and went home early. The next week, when she came to class, she said, "Excuse me for leaving early last night, but if I hadn't left when I did, I probably would have had too many tears to drive home." She said, "I drove home and told my husband what happened," and she said, "We held each other and cried for an hour."
That's amazing.
And she said, to me, it's like a miracle. And she said, it's amazing that hypnosis can do that. And I looked her straight in the eyes, and I said, your faith made you whole.
So really there are no limits as far as we're willing to see what's possible.
I have heard some amazing stories from others, and one of the best sessions Charles Tebbett's ever facilitated, which I have actually labeled a Miracle on Demand, is a DVD that's available of him doing parts therapy on an epileptic to overcome seizures.
And what was the result?
5 years later, the volunteer gave a lecture in my advanced hypnotherapy class and said he had had neither a drink nor a seizure since that session 5 years earlier at Charlie's.
There you go. So the power of hypnosis, the power of our minds, and the power of our higher wisdom.
Indeed.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you here today.
It was my honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.